are watching ACT TV. We are live in the nation's capital at March for Our Lives. We are steps from the U.S. Capitol. There are hundreds of thousands of protesters out here today, most of them young people. In fact, all of the speakers you'll hear speaking today are 18 years of age or younger. We are out here at the March for Our Lives protest and rally and march for one reason, and that is to end gun violence. We'll be live all day. Don't go anywhere. This is ACT TV. Ask Rebecca to mute her phone, Brad, please. Ribbon? Would anyone like to say just a few words? A few words?
You want a child or an adult?
Either one.
Sure.
Do you have a message for your member of Congress?
Absolutely. Vote for gun reform or you won't be in office very long. These kids are serious. That's my message.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Do you have a message for your member of Congress?
Please vote to get some common sense gun control.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Again, you are watching students and their parents from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. They are marching here live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. These are students and parents from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Can I ask you about your sign? Well, look at this sign. F the NRA. Has the NRA won, or is public sentiment changing?
I think public sentiment is definitely changing. I mean, the turnout here is incredible, and I think some real change is actually happening. I don't think the NRA really has that much support. I think it's evident online as well as in person, and I'm sure we'll see more of that today.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, you are watching ACT TV live from Washington, D.C. These are students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. They are walking towards the Capitol, and they have a message for everyone. Gun reform now. No more gun deaths. Can I ask you a question? Why was it important for you to be here today?
I thought it was important to be here today because gun rights are wrong and they need to be fixed. Like, people are getting hurt and dying. We need to continue while people are getting hurt, we need to continue the life. People are dying and it's not right. It shouldn't be happening.
Do you feel like politicians' reactions to school shootings makes you feel like your life isn't important?
No, I feel like my life is important, but I do think that they do need to do something about it because what they're doing just kind of isn't right.
I'm leaving it to you and your generation to make the change. I think you can do it. We're behind you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for being here today.
MSD!
Who are we?
Everything here looks the same.
are watching the March for Our Lives rally in Washington, D.C. This is Sabrina Williams with act.tv. I am lucky enough to be here with a special guest, Karen, who has come all the way from New Jersey with her son. Karen, why was it important for you to be here today?
We just felt that we had to be here and support the students and this rally, and we just feel it's our duty to be here and speak out against a lot of issues. Guns are one of them, in support of mental health reforms, just common sense gun laws. And also we're in our special hearts are the victims of the Newtown shooting. We're with a group called Where Angels Play Foundation, and we build playgrounds in honor of victims, and we're just so blessed to be here.
So what about gun violence, particularly gun violence in our public schools, in our schools, makes you the most upset and frustrated?
We're very frustrated because no child should be afraid in their classrooms in this country, and we need to do something and not have our politicians take money from special interest groups who are killing our kids. Okay, we need to vote against these people, get them out of office. This is America, and it's a home of the free, and we are being oppressed by people taking money from special interest groups, and our kids are paying the price.
They definitely are, and I see you brought your son with you today. You said he's 12. What's your name, sweetie?
Connor Johnson.
And why was it important for you to be here today, Connor?
To protest, to show the bad guys that it was wrong to kill the kids.
And what would you like to see done?
I'd like to see done that the bad guys shouldn't kill those kids anymore so those kids can stay in peace.
You're right, because no kid should have to go to school in fear. School should be a place to learn, have fun, make friends, and grow, right?
Right.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming down. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now?
Okay.
Or, but you don't have to.
You're watching act.tv. We are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our
Ask Rebecca
Lives
to mute her
March
phone,
and
Brad,
Rally.
please.
There are hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of D.C. right now, and they have one simple message. Let's end gun violence. Let's do it now. Let's do it today. You're watching act.tv. You're watching act.tv. We are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives rally and march. Hundreds of thousands of people are in the streets of Washington, D.C. with a clear message for President Trump and our members of Congress. Let's end gun violence, and let's end it now. No one should be scared when they're at school. You're watching act.tv. You're watching act.tv. We are live in the nation's capital at the March for Our Lives. We're bringing you footage from cities around the country. There's a clear message today. Let's end gun violence. Let's enact strict gun regulation. Live, let's go to New York. You're watching Act TV.
I came to march out for many different reasons. One, to empower the youth and empower people who are older than me to do the right thing and to lead America into the right direction and into the right path. Huh? I hope it might be a change in society and a change in the mindset of the youth, because everyone has a mindset of the hood mentality. Hood mentality is picking up a gun and do whatever you have to do to solve an issue. Now the vice versa of this is I want to see more youth come out here so we can support each other, where we can have a tight bond, where whenever something happens, we can come together as a community and we can fight a battle that has taken so long to be seen. We can bring everything to the light.
I think an awareness of what they're dealing with in terms of people's will, and the courage of these young people, and how effectively they motivate larger groups of population. Bottom line, we're not going to vote for them. We're going to vote them out, and they, the only way they can see that is by the numbers, by having numbers out, and young people are it's not guys like me. It's the young people that are frightening to them, because they're going to be in the voting population for a long time.
So I have to say, I grew up watching Teen Wolf. It was one of my favorite movies. I mean, I love that movie, and I feel like so much has changed for teenagers and in schools since then. Can you maybe, how do you feel about that change?
Well, I mean, to be frank, Teen Wolf was a movie about puberty, and it's about the way kids now don't. They don't take any bullshit. They don't listen to what people are yakking at them and just prayers and hopes and thoughts, and they say bullshit. Let's get it done. Let's get this done. Kids are dying, and we don't think about not only the kids that are killed and wounded, but the kids that live in fear of, like, any day that door's going to kick open and someone's going to come in with an Uzi or a combat weapon and kill them. I mean, it's horrifying.
I can't imagine being a kid now. When I grew up, Columbine had just happened, and it seems like everything has changed.
Right? Columbine was a horrible day. I remember that day. It was, and then of course the school in Connecticut. It's just horrifying to think every one of these deaths. It's just meaningless and it's pointless. And I think kids have a fear and an apprehension and a feeling of jeopardy from this, but the way they've been empowered by it is just so moving and so stunning.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I'm just here with my wife and my daughter, who my wife anyway was at the march in Washington, and it's kind of cool that they did that and they're doing this, and it's just great to see people get motivated, and within my own family, people motivated to affect change.
How old is your daughter? Is she in high school?
No, she's a college grad. She's out of college, but they're all moved by this and want to get something done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We are live here at the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. As you can see, the streets are crowded with hundreds of thousands of protesters with one single message for our elected officials.
I came out.
Let's end gun violence, and let's do it now. Here's a lady, she is trying to register people to vote out here. What's your name and what are you doing out here today?
My name is Mary Ann Roberts. I live here in Washington, D.C., and I'm a volunteer for the march to register people to vote.
And why is it important to register people at the March for Our Lives rally?
Because, as Miss Gonzalez said so eloquently, the young girl survivor in Florida, register to vote. Because marching is great, but voting matters. All members of Congress are up for re-election November 6th. If a lot of people didn't vote the last election, we need to vote. It is our power, and I'm happy to be here.
Get those registrations. Thank you so much. Thank you. You are watching ACT TV, and we are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. We're surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people out in the streets. They are taking action today, and they have a message for our elected officials, and that is we want change, and we want change right now. Let's end gun violence. Let's enact some tough gun legislation. Stay with us. We're live. ACT TV, March for Our Lives. Why was it important for you to be here today?
I thought it was important to be here today because gun rights are wrong and they need to be fixed. Like, people are getting hurt and dying. We need to continue while people are getting...
Can I ask you a question? Why was it important for you to be here today?
I thought it was important to be here today because gun rights are wrong and they need to be fixed. Like, people are getting hurt and dying. We need to continue while people are getting hurt, we need to continue, like, the life. People are dying and it's not right. It shouldn't be happening.
Do you feel like politicians' reactions to school shootings makes you feel like your life isn't important?
No, I feel like my life is important, but I do think that they do need to do something about it because what they're doing just kind of isn't right.
I'm leaving it to you and your generation to make the change. I think you can do it. We're behind you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for being here today.
MSD! Who are we?
Everything here looks the same.
You ready? Just
MSD! Who are we?
System we've been forced into and create a better world for the generations to come. Don't worry, we've got this. The people of this country now see past the lies. We've seen this narrative before. For the first time, the corrupt aren't controlling our story. We are. The corrupt aren't manipulating the facts. We know the truth. Shooting after shooting, the American people now see one thing they all have in common: the weapons. Politicians, either represent the people or get out. The people demand a law banning the sale of assault weapons. The people demand we prohibit the sale of high-capacity magazines. The people demand universal background checks, stand for us or beware, the voters are coming. On February 14th, tragedy struck my hometown and my school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High. Alyssa Al-Hadef, Scott Beagle, Martin Duque Anguiano, Aaron Feist, Jamie Guttenberg, Chris Hickson, Luke Hoyer, Kara Loughran, Gina Montaldo, Joaquin Oliver, Helena Petty, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Alex Schachter, Carmen Shentrup, Peter Wang, and Nicholas Dworet all lost their lives in less than 7 minutes. And I saved Nicholas for the end because today is Nicholas's birthday. Nicholas, we are all here for you. Happy birthday. Their families endured great pain. Many others were injured, and thousands of young people, my classmates, were forced to become adults and were targeted as adults. We have to do this for them. We must stand beside those we've lost and fix the world that betrayed them. This doesn't just happen in schools. Americans are being attacked in churches, nightclubs, movie theaters, and on the streets. But we, the people, can fix this. For the first time in a long while, I look forward 10 years and I feel hope. I see light. I see a system I'll be proud of, but it all starts with you. The march is not the climax of this movement, it is the beginning. It is the springboard off of which my generation and all who stand with us will jump into a safer future. Today is a bad day for tyranny and corruption. Today, we take to the streets in over 800 marches around the globe and demand common sense gun laws. Today is the beginning of a bright new future for this country. And if you think today is good, just wait for tomorrow. We must protect, educate, and inspire the future. And everybody here is proof that we will do that, and the future is looking very bright for this country. Thank you.
I want to start off with a chant. Everybody repeat after me. Everyday shootings are everyday problems. No, that was a little weak, everybody. I need stronger than that. Everyday shootings are everyday problems. Now, make sure everybody in Washington hears us. Everyday shootings are everyday problems. My name is Trevon Bosley, and I'm here with the brave youth leaders of St. Sabina, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Chicago's youth who are surrounded and affected by gun violence every day. I'm here to speak for those youth who fear they may be shot while going to the gas station, the movies, the bus stop, to church, or even to and from school. I'm here to speak for those Chicago youth who feel their voices have been silenced for far too long. And I'm here to speak on behalf of everyone that believes a child getting shot and killed in Chicago or any other city is still a not acceptable norm. Most importantly, I'm here to speak on behalf of my brother Terrell Bosley, who was shot and killed while leaving church April 4, 2006. Just to give you guys a few stats from Chicago, since 2006, there have been more than 5,850 people shot and killed in Chicago. And since 2012, there have been more than 16,000 people shot. Now, let me repeat that one more time. Since 2006, there have been more than 5,850 people shot and killed in Chicago. And since 2012, there have been more than 16,000 people shot in Chicago. These stats are not just numbers in a speech. These are mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. On a societal proportion, these are lawyers, doctors, artists, musicians. And more than anything else, these are lives cut short due to senseless gun violence. I must add, though, Chicago's violence epidemic didn't start overnight. It was caused by many problems that we are still not dealing with to this day. When you have a city that feels it's more important to help pay for a college and sports complex rather than fund schools and impoverished communities, you have gun violence. When you have a city that feels we need more divvy bikes in downtown Chicago for tourists rather than more funding for workforce programs that get guys off the streets real jobs, you have gun violence. When you have an Illinois state governor, Bruce Rauner, who feels that funding anti-violence programs is, I quote, non-essential spending, you have gun violence. When you have elected officials who feel that getting a few extra dollars from the NRA is more important than their actual constituents, you have gun violence. And when you have a president that would rather constantly talk about and belittle Chicago's violence than rather than send funds and resources, you have gun violence. It is time for the nation to realize gun violence is more than just a Chicago problem or a Parkland problem, but it's an American problem. We are here demanding that this country, we are here demanding that we get what we as these people of this country deserve. We deserve a right to have a life of fear without fear of being gunned down. We can only live in this so often called the American dream if we have the proper gun legislation and resources to do so. And in Chicago's case, no more frivolous spending on tourist attractions, but rather we need to spend on the people that actually live there. It's time to care about all communities equally. It's time to stop judging some communities as worthy and some communities as unworthy. It's time to stop judging youth that look like me or my brother that come from impoverished communities any different than anyone else. It's time for America to notice that everyday shootings are everyday problems. I'll close with this quote by Martin Luther King Jr., which said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." I said this to say, no matter the hurdles we may face along this journey, we must remain hopeful and we must continue to stand together and fight for the lives that we deserve. Thank you.
March for Our Lives, March and Rally. The objective today is to end gun violence. This is an amazing sign. Can you tell me a little bit about your sign?
Sure. I mean, this is not an original thought. Will I be next? Not only is this affecting a lot of schools, it's affected movie theaters, it's affected concerts. So even though I'm way past high school age, this could happen to me any day. It's really important, I feel, that we get some kind of gun regulation in place. We have more regulations for our cars, which kill more people every year. So something like registration, gun licenses, that sort of thing, I think is at least a common sense first step if we can't get to the point of just outlawing automatic rifles altogether.
And so can I ask, when you talk about this issue with your friends and family and your peers, are most of them in support of some type of gun control legislation?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I even have friends who are gun owners, and they own one or two guns either for sporting or for self-defense, and they consider themselves law-abiding gun owners. And I really feel like any law-abiding gun owner should have no problem registering his gun with the government.
Excellent. And so what was there a certain incident that really inspired you to be here today, or is it just kind of the culmination of really all these sad, senseless deaths?
Well, it's gotten to the point that we're almost desensitized to it. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember Columbine and how shocking that was to my generation. But, since then, it's just a regular occurrence, and it should not be a regular occurrence. There's a lot of different reasons for the causes of this, but the common thread is guns, and especially guns with lots of firing, in 1 second. So those high-powered magazines with lots of shots capable in a short amount of time just really don't seem to be necessary for any law-abiding citizen. That seems to belong in the hands of policemen or the military, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for being here, for your support.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Again, this is ACT-TV. You're watching live. We're at the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned. We'll be here most of the day.
There are so very many things, so many steps to take. Like right now, sign our petition. It takes 2 seconds, and it matters. We will take the big, and we will take the small, but we will keep fighting. When they give us that inch, that bump stock ban, we will take a mile. We are not here for breadcrumbs, we are here for real change. We are here to lead. We are here to call out single politician, to force them into enacting this legislation, to addressing this legislation, to doing more than a simple Band-Aid on a broken bone. The pressure is on for every person in power, and it will stay that way. Because they know what is coming. They know that if there is no assault weapons ban passed, then we will vote them out. They know that if there is no tightening of the background checks, we will vote them out. They know that if there is no shrinking of magazine capacity, then we will vote them out. If they continue to ignore us, to only pretend to listen, then we will take action where it counts. For the media. We will take action every day in every way until they simply cannot ignore us anymore. Today, we march, we fight, we roar. We prepare our signs, we raise them high. We know what we want, we know how to get it, and we are not waiting any longer. Thank you.
This is a lockdown drill.
Even if it's a drill, when it's brought to your home, it makes it more real.
We heard gunshots, so we started thinking it was real.
We would try to run away from the attacker or anything outside of the campus.
I started to think, what if this would happen?
It really brought the reality of the situation to us, I think.
This is my 10th one. So, but the weird thing is, it gets me every time.
This kind of emergency training should not need to happen in our schools. Since the massacre at Columbine High School, more than 150,000 students in at least 170 elementary, middle,
for the fame or for the fun. I'm here on this stage today, and I'm here working every day for my 17 fellow Eagles pronounced dead because of gunfire. I am here for every person that has died at the hands of gun violence, and for the many more whose lives were irreparably changed because of it. I hope that is why we are all here. Because this is more than just a march. This is more than just one day, one event, then moving on. This is not a mere publicity stunt, a single day in the span of history. This is a movement. This is a movement relying on the persistence and the passion of its people. We cannot move on. If we move on, the NRA and those against us will win. They want us to forget. They want our voices to be silenced, and they want to retreat into the shadows where they can remain unnoticed. They want to be back on top, unquestioned in their corruption. But we cannot and we will not let that happen. Today and every day, we will continue to fight for those things that are right. We will continue to fight for common sense. We will continue to fight for our lives. We will continue to fight for our dead friends. There will be no faltering, no pauses in our cause. Every moment will be dedicated to those pieces of legislation. Every march, every meeting, every moment. All for that assault weapons ban, to keep these weapons of war out of the hands of civilians who do not need them. All for the prohibition of high-capacity magazines, because no hunter will ever need access to a magazine that can kill 17 in mere minutes. All for the reinforcement of background checks and closing of loopholes, because there must be more requirement for a person to access a gun than just a wad of cash. There are so very many things, so many steps to take. Like right now, sign our petition. It takes 2 seconds, and it matters. We will take the big, and we will take the small, but we will keep fighting. When they give us that inch, that bump stock ban, we will take a mile. We are not here for breadcrumbs, we are here for real change. We are here to lead. We are here to call out every single politician, to force them into enacting this legislation, to addressing this legislation, to doing more than a simple Band-Aid on a broken bone. The pressure is on for every person in power, and it will stay that way. Because they know what is coming. They know that if there is no assault weapons ban passed, then we will vote them out. They know that if there is no tightening of the background checks, we will vote them out.
And you are watching ACT TV. We are live from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, at March for Our Lives. I'm here with a very special guest, my good friend Justin. Justin, what brought you out here today?
Well, the Parkland students have really shown they have incredible instincts to turn a tragedy into a movement, and I want to support that, and I want to support the fact that we need sensible gun control in America.
The Parkland students have done a great job of really raising public awareness about fear of gun violence in schools and just generally about gun violence. Do you think this time will be any different?
I think it could be, because I think something that we're seeing that's unique here is a real unification across more traditional lines. We've got people in Southeast DC that have been affected by gun violence in their communities on a daily basis that are showing up and being a part of this, because there's a real understanding that gun violence affects people across the country in all sorts of ways, and that if we work together to do something about it, maybe something can actually happen this time.
So what I hear you saying is this is a bipartisan issue, maybe?
I think it is a bipartisan issue, and I think part of the reason why we haven't seen action on it so far is that you've got the NRA making contributions in the amount of millions of dollars to the campaigns of both parties. And I think if we do something about that, and we get the NRA out of the way, we might actually see some real action in Congress.
What can we do aside from marching and rallying? This is extremely important. This builds community, this raises awareness, this really shows our politicians how many people care about this. What else can we do, though?
Well, I think the thing we've got to do first is listen to the students who are being affected by this. And I think that when you do that, you hear answers from them about things like you say, community building, marches, do things like that. But there are lots of ways to build and be a part of the movement, right? You can contribute by being a part of the conversation online. You can contribute by reaching out to your state legislators, to your city council people, to your Congress people, to make sure that they understand that this is a priority, that we need to get something serious done about gun control in this country. And there are all kinds of ways to take part in a movement, even if you can't join a march like the one today.
Thank you so much for being here today, Justin. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and good luck with the rest of the broadcast today.
Thank you. Again, this is act.tv. We are live at the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. Stay with us. We're going live now to New York.
$355, the amount of money Marco Rubio has received from the National Rifle Association. It comes out to $1.05. Is that all we're worth to these politicians? $1.05? Was $17.85 all it cost you that day, Mr. Rubio? Well, I say one life is worth more than all the guns in America. This is not a red versus blue issue. This is a morals issue. And to the politicians that believe that their right to own a gun comes before our lives, get ready to get voted out by us, the future. We will not allow a price to be put upon our lives. We will no longer be hunted down and treated like prey by politicians who simply just don't care about us. We are fighting. We have been fighting. We've been fighting since Columbine, since Sandy Hook, since Pulse, since Las Vegas. And we will continue to fight until we put a stop to gun violence in America. Because we are no longer a statistic in this country. We will not be treated like a statistic.
Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. Clearly, there are tons of people out here with a message, and that message is let's end gun violence. These special guests are from the George Washington Educational Center in New York. They've come all the way down today. And what brought you all down here today?
We want to stop gun violence and stop it from happening.
And are you all scared to go to school? I mean, yeah? Stand up here and talk to me. So what grade are you in?
I'm a senior at the High School for Media and Communications.
And how has gun violence impacted your life? Do you know anyone who's been a victim, or do you just watch it on TV and
I watch it on TV and it's just scary. Like, you just don't know when it can happen. It can happen to anyone, and the fact that people have access to these guns, it's scary to have on the streets in schools, period. And I think something needs to be done.
And what's your name?
Davey.
And how old are you?
9.
And what do you know about gun violence?
I don't know that much.
Have you heard about anyone being attacked or shot in a school?
Yes.
And what do you think about that?
I think that's bad.
Would you like to see no one be hurt again by a gun?
No.
You want people to be hurt by guns? No, right. That's what I thought you said. I understand you. It's hard being your age. All right. So it sounds like you've helped these kids organize something awesome. What's your name and where are you from?
Richard Espinal. I'm from New York City with Catholic Charities, and so this group of young people are accompanied by our Catholic Charity staff and from our Alianza division. And so we're here because together we feel that it is time to call an end to gun violence, that our students should feel safe in their classrooms, that our school campuses shouldn't be shooting grounds, and that together we can raise our voices, and particularly as adults, we have an obligation to them to ensure their future and make sure that they have the ability to exercise their voice and see and build the future that they want for themselves.
Now let me just ask you a few more questions. Let me ask you a question. What is the solution to ending gun violence in the U.S.?
There's many solutions to ending gun violence in the U.S. You can just make harder to pass gun laws. You can improve security on school buildings. There's just so many ways to do it, and we just need to take action. That's what I feel.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think that arming teachers is the answer?
Not at all. The teachers, I don't go to the Academy in New York. I go to a school in New Jersey instead. And at my school, certain teachers just do not take responsibilities, nor security guards that they should. And I feel like arming teachers would not strengthen the situation. It would simply weaken it.
Excellent. I'm going to ask someone over here one more question. How about you? Your generation is, okay, I'll ask you. You all's generation is really taking the lead in trying to end gun violence. Do you think you'll have a different outcome than so many of the generations before that have clearly tried but failed you all?
Obviously, we decided to make another impact because we came out here from New York to show how we feel, how we feel we deserve importance. Our voice needs to be heard, because if it wasn't heard many years, we want to be heard now instead of later. Better safe than never.
If you could speak to President Trump right now, what do you want to tell him about ending gun violence?
that there's no point to arm teachers because you don't know what type of mindset they have. Some teachers can have bad blood with students and just say, screw it all and end it. And then if you give other people guns, you don't know what they have. Everyone has a different mindset with guns. Some can be helpful, some can be hurtful, but we just need to end it all so nothing can go bad again.
Excellent, excellent advice. Again, these are some of our youngest protesters out here from New York all the way down from Washington, D.C., where we are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. We are going to end gun violence together, right? Together, right? Woo!
I need you to keep moving a little quicker. Pay attention when you're walking back. Every single email I get. Sorry. Don't worry.
You are watching act.tv, and we are live in the nation's capital at the March for Our Lives, the march to try to end gun violence in America and try to get some logical gun control legislation. I'm here with two students. What's your names and where are you all from?
My name is Jalen. I'm from Hyattsville. I go to Northwestern High School.
My name's Ariana. I go to the same school as her.
And what inspired you all to come out to the March for Our Lives today?
Well, I would I'm bad at words. So I know there's a lot of violence in schools and stuff, and there are kids who will joke about that type of stuff, but I don't think they understand how serious it is. So I'm just here to prove how serious it is and that I actually care about it.
That's a great answer. Very, very mature.
Well, for me, it's a lot of things could happen at so many different schools that you don't know where it's going to happen next, and it puts fear into kids, and they shouldn't have to deal with that. We shouldn't have to have lockdown drills, and we shouldn't. The first lockdown drill I ever had, everybody cried, everybody was shaking, everybody was scared, and it was not a pleasant thing to witness, and it wasn't healthy.
And the first lockdown drill we had at high school was a real lockdown.
Yeah.
Can you describe a little bit what happened?
I'm not sure exactly what happened. I don't remember exactly what happened. They said
there was a dispute across the street. There is a residential area across the street from our high school. And there was a dispute, and the police were called, so they had a lockdown drill for 15 minutes in second period.
First week of school, first week or month of school, actual lockdown.
And how do you think that impacts you, both in the short term, like your ability to concentrate in school, like what do you think about gun violence, but also in the long term, like do you think this maybe is giving kids a little bit of like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder?
I mean, kids are terrified. Like the week after we came back, we had a fire drill and everybody was afraid to go outside because they thought something was going to happen. So like it makes kids basically paranoid.
Well, a lot of the kids are already like super dealing with hormones and stuff, teenager stuff, and adding a lot of like violence to that makes people just aware of what could happen, paranoid, and like scared to do things like go out. Like even here, when I told my dad about coming here, he was like, be aware of people. Like people who are pro-gun, people who could have fought something, could like start shooting in the crowd, like a lot of stuff like that.
I'm going to ask you all one last question. Are you all old enough to vote?
Not yet.
And when you do start voting, will you vote for candidates that are backed by the NRA or candidates that will support strong gun legislation?
Candidates who support strong gun legislation.
Same.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I hope you register to vote when you're able and you do even more to support the cause. Thank you so much for being out here today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, this is ACT-TV, and we are live from Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. Let's go back to New York now.
Let's go, guys. Step it up. Step it up. Don't hold up so much.
Folks, I need you to walk a little quicker to the street. Backwards if you can. Gotta get you some roller skates. Sam, I need you to come back. That's what happens. That's why that happens. All right? We stopped 6 times. We stopped 6 times already. That hope. I hear you. You guys are right.
Let's go, guys. Step it up. Step it up. Let's go, guys. Step it up. Step it up. Let's go, guys. Step it up. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
I believe. Folks, gonna come back a little quicker. Let's go. We're in trouble. Because I'm 44, I'm fucking jumping. But I think that's about right. Let me get a compliment.
I believe that we will win. 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 I believe that we will win.
This is Sabrina Williams, and you are watching ACT-TV. We are live from Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives event. And I have 2 special people here. What's your name and where are you from?
I'm Christiana, and I live here in D.C.
I'm Belio Sorrell. I'm from Washington, D.C.
It's awesome friends you have. Nana for grandkids, grandparents for grandchildren. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on gun violence and how it's, impacting our schools and our children and our grandkids.
My father was killed by gun violence when I was a child. My children survived elementary, middle, and high school. And now I have grandchildren, and I wish they could live without fear and get through school alive.
That's so powerful to have been, personally impacted by gun violence. And so as a person who's been obviously personally impacted. What do you want to say to someone like President Trump who wants to arm teachers or our members of Congress?
I don't really have anything to say to Mr. Trump because I don't think he would listen. I think the hope is come midterm elections, and we need to, that's when we need to stand up and say something. Speaking to Trump won't do any good. He's not even here. Not here otherwise. He's just not here.
So let's not raise. Do you think that our members of Congress can be pressured enough to vote how the majority of Americans want them to vote on gun policy?
Well, we are very heartened to be here today and to see the young generation of high school students taking the leadership and taking our country in the direction it must go. And we only pray and hope that their example and their leadership will make a difference in the elections coming up this fall, so that we get the Congress that that America deserves.
And why do you think it's been so hard to get good, logical, sensible gun legislation through Congress? Are we not putting enough pressure? Do our members of Congress not understand? What do you think is the issue?
I think we have unfortunately, is a democracy that has been hijacked by financial interests at the highest levels, and really elections have been bought, so to speak, by these financial interests. We need to recapture our American democracy and get the people's needs and votes count in the direction that we see it must go. And I think the children who catalyze this meeting here today in the hundreds of thousands are setting the example, and I hope people like us, parents, grandparents who are here today, and I'm very heartened not only by their leadership, but also the multi-generational participation of parents, grandparents, and I hope that this turns into translating that the vote this fall to get the Congress we need and we deserve.
You're absolutely right. Michael Moore recently said on a live stream that we actually partnered on that the largest political party right now is the non-voting party. Non-voters make up the majority of Americans, so we have to figure out a way to get people out to the polls this November in 2020 so that we can change so many things that are wrong in our democracy.
But there's also an educational issue. I understand the Second Amendment, and I understand why people want to have guns, and I don't want to take guns away from people who legitimately have them and use them in legitimate ways. I just don't understand why anybody needs more than a couple, and I don't understand why anyone needs an assault weapon, and I don't understand why we got rid of the assault weapon ban. I think it can pass the Supreme Court, even this Supreme Court, and I just think we just need to try harder and educate people.
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing here today. We're trying harder. You're watching ACT.TV. We're live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. Let's go back to New York.
Every time.
This is Sabrina Williams with ACT.TV. We are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives event. I have a very special guest here. I can't do you justice. I'm going to let you I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
My name is Rich Thomas, mayor of the great city of Mount Vernon in New York, and happy to be a part of this movement to move not just our city forward, but our country forward with our young people.
And talk to me about how gun violence has impacted your city and what you're doing about it.
Well, Mount Vernon, once upon a time, used to be known for a lot of high crime and violence. And for the past couple of years, we've been able to get crime to just plummet by 32%. And that's not just, one static statistic, it's continuous. And the young people are really rising up. They're partnering with our police, they're partnering with our government, and they're partnering with each other. That network of disconnects is coming together. And today is really a flashpoint in America's history, because for 20 years, you think about Columbine, 20 years ago. 20 years later, it's now the thing. It's now the right thing to do to challenge the NRA, to challenge convention, and to push forward for sensible reforms. And today is a real clear confirmation that we've come a long way, and we still have some ways to go, but today we're here, and we're making sure that the wisdom and energy continues to power we, the people.
It sounds like you have some sensible laws up there in Mount Vernon, New York, and research shows that sensible gun laws, a ban on assault weapons, registration and universal background checks decreases gun deaths and, gun violence. Why are we not seeing a change? Why are we not seeing legislation come out of our Congress?
It's more than legislation, and I think this battle is spiritual, but I do think that Dr. King said it best when he talked about Rip Van Winkle. Now, Rip Van Winkle went up a mountain, fell asleep for 20 years. But the real moral of the story is when he went up the mountain, he saw a picture of King George. When he came down the mountain, he saw a picture of President George Washington. You think about that 20-year period, he was asleep during tremendous times of change. And right now, people are waking up 20 years later realizing that times must change. It must be a cultural change, not just legislation, but people must wake up and know that automatic weapons, weapons of war, are not welcome in schools or homes of worship or places where people are trying to just enjoy life, liberty, and happiness. So time is now, and our young people are rising up, and they're going to send a very clear message in 2019, 2018, 2020. You go up and down the line, young people are going to continue to rise up and move this country in the right direction.
Excellent. I'm hoping we're moving in the right direction, and with politicians like you who don't take money from the NRA.
No, let me tell you something. It's not about politics, it's about leadership. And leadership is inherently in conflict with politics. So young people, as they continue to take a stand for what they believe in, you're going to see the disintegration of normal, traditional party lines, because people are going to look at each other and the issues more than they are going to look at alliances. So I'm looking at the issue, and I think the real issue is keeping a clean environment, having safe streets, great quality of life, and it's all about leadership. So that's what we need to focus on.
All right, well, we're going to change our leader's mind. We are going to end gun violence in this generation, hopefully today. You're watching ACT TV. We are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. Let's go back to New York. This is Sabrina Williams. You are live. You are watching ACT TV. We are live here in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives event. There are hundreds of thousands of people out here in the streets, and we have one message. Let's end gun violence. Let's get some sensible gun legislation on the books. I'm here with a participant in the march today. What's your name and where are you from?
I'm Craig Ellis from the D.C. area, Alexandria in particular, and I think it's courageous what's going on, people expressing themselves and trying to seek results from Congress, to do something about the tragic deaths in these schools that are just way too many. And I, for one, am marching, and hopefully this impact is felt around the nation.
And why do you think we don't have sensible gun control laws right now? Have we not been vocal enough? What's been going on over the past 20 to 30 years?
Well, you hit it right on the head. A lot of us haven't been vocal enough. There have been problems in the past in schools or in everyday life, Things haven't gotten done in Congress. Unfortunately, people pack their pockets, whether Congress, senators, presidents, or whatnot. That's unfortunate, but we've lost kids and people.
Guys, please make some room here.
Of politicians' pockets.
Do you think there is a changing tide, particularly since Parkland? I feel something different in the atmosphere. Do you feel that too, or do you think it'll be the same old in 6 months or a year?
Well, I think the Parkland kids are heroes, and they're very courageous. I actually lived in South Florida for the last 8 years. I moved back to this area where I'm from a year ago, and I live about 9-10 miles from Parkland, believe it or not. And I think their impact is heartfelt. It's gotten people who it's hit home with, and their being vocal has allowed other kids in the country to be more vocal and adults to be more vocal and people to speak out more and put the heat on Congress to reform laws.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, who comes dressed this nice to a march? But that's okay. He's serious about it. You are watching ACT TV. We are live at the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. Let's go back to New York now.
Sorry, guys. I got disconnected. But I'm back. Pick a side, guys. Left and right. Oh, good. This way. Yeah. Go this way. The only thing is that the pixel are to the left and to the right. Battery is low. Keep moving. Exit to the left.
Please exit to your left and to your right. Keep moving to the end of the block. Volunteers in orange shirts are there to collect postcards for your legislators. You can exit to your left or to your right. Down the block. Volunteers will collect postcards for your legislators. You exit to your right or to your left. Down the block. Orange shirts will collect postcards for your legislators. Please exit to your right or to your left.
Democracy. Now is the time to come together, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, but as Americans. Americans of the same flesh and blood that care about one thing and one thing only, and that's the future of this country and the children that are going to lead it. Now, they will try to separate us in demographics. They will try to separate us by religion, race, congressional district, and class. They will fail. We will come together. We will get rid of these public servants that only serve the gun lobby. And we will save lives. You are those heroes. Lastly, let's put the USA over the NRA. This is the start of the spring and the blossoming of our democracy. So let's take this to our local legislators, and let's take this to midterm elections, because without the persistent heat, without the persistence of voters and Americans everywhere getting out to every election, democracy will not flourish, but it can and it will. So I say to those politicians that say change will not come, I say we will not stop until every man, every woman, every child, and every American can live without fear of gun violence. And to that I say, no more. Thank you. I love you all. God bless all of you, and God bless America. We can and we will change the world.
You are watching ACT TV. This is Sabrina Williams, and we are live in the nation's capital at the March for Our Lives. I'm joined by a very special protester. This is Phil Ramos. He is an assemblyman on Long Island. What brings you all the way down to D.C. today?
Well, I am here with a delegation of Long Island. Long Island's in the house, right? And our students are here making their mark. We're here to see if the young people can once again make history in this country. We all know that it is the young people in this country that ended the Vietnam War. When they decide to stand up and do something, they can change the course of history. And we hope that that happens here today. You know, when the Second Amendment was written, the Second Amendment said that we will have a well-regulated militia and that the right to firearms will not be infringed upon. What people ignore is well-regulated. We are here to enforce that part of our Constitution that says that we have a right to regulate it. And at that time, for somebody to fire a gun, they had to put a pin, they had to put a cap on a hammer, they had to get out a flask, put some gunpowder, a long rod, one ball, stuff it down, shoot, and then it would take them 5 minutes to do it again. They never intended a situation like in Las Vegas where 800 people can be injured in 10 minutes, over 50 killed. We have to regulate it, and it is within the law to do that. So we're hoping that these young people here can finally have the impact to change those laws and bring about real gun control.
Let me just ask you a question. Do you think it should be considered corruption to take money from the NRA if you're an elected politician?
Well, if there's a quid pro quo and that money is taken in return for some monetary gain to a particular industry, it really walks the line there. And I think that we've seen how special interests have taken over the agenda of this country in many instances, and that is what drives things. They put politics before people. They put campaign contributions before people. We have young people who have been killed, and their lives are worth much more than a campaign contribution. We should put an end to it.
You heard it here. This is ACT TV. We are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. We were speaking with Phil Ramos. He is making changes on Long Island. Stay with us. We'll be live for the next hour or so here at the March for Our Lives. We are going to end gun violence. We're going to end it now.
Thank you.
the Marxist economist.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Juliana Forlano for ACT.tv. I'm here with Marxist economist. We're very excited to have him. He's going to be a regular part of some of our live stream coverage. Dr. Richard Wolff. Doctor, thank you for taking part here today.
My pleasure, glad to be here.
So we're talking about gun control. What's the economic reason behind this whole debate about gun control? What are the economics?
Well, the problem is that we allow guns to be made by companies that are capitalist companies that are out to make money.
Okay.
They want a profit, that's why they're in that business, like any other business. And one of the ways you make profit is selling lots of stuff. Every company that's a capitalist enterprise knows that. The gun producers are no different. So they want to sell guns.
Okay.
And like every other corporation, one of the ways you get people to buy guns is you advertise. But here the gun companies are a little different. They don't advertise by going in the usual places to get a billboard or a magazine ad, but they have a wonderful deal that other companies don't have. They have an association that runs around the country called the NRA, telling everybody that if you're a real man, you have a gun. If you're not safe, you can become safe with a gun. Constantly beating the drum about a gun, or maybe two, or maybe one in each car and one in each bathroom would be helpful. This is the best advertising any capitalist could have, and that's really the relationship. The gun industry has a NRA that does the advertising. The only thing better than that is that the NRA raises most of its money not from the gun companies, but from the members who want to be in the NRA.
Oh wow, they really got a good...
So you got an advertiser you don't have to pay all that much to. Really good deal.
Wow. And then the NRA goes on to lobby and buy our congresspeople.
Absolutely, because you want the laws that will do what the NRA is there to do. Get people to buy more guns, make it as easy as possible to buy a gun, make it as convenient as possible. So yeah, you have a wonderful arrangement where the company helps the NRA helps the company, everybody makes a lot of money, and the politicians are brought in to do their part. It's very American.
Are there any other kind of economic systems that could help mitigate against the fact that kids are getting gunned down in their schools by maybe controlling gun manufacturers, or how do other countries do it?
Well, I think, first of all, in other countries, they wouldn't allow the proliferation of guns, even though they have private gun companies.
By just having laws, anti-gun laws. You can't have this kind or that kind.
It's a little bit like the tobacco industry, right? As long as we said, gee, cigarettes are bad for you, but we let the cigarette companies advertise and do everything, then we were busy saying it's not a good idea, but everybody was dying of lung cancer. I mean, at least a lot of people were. We finally said this has to stop. Eventually, we'll do that with guns, too. You can't let the gun people keep doing this game, which is spreading the guns and spreading the violence and spreading the killing. We are already the country in the world that has more of this kind of killing with guns than any other country on earth, per capita or anything else. Eventually, we'll have to put the kibosh on that industry the way we did on cigarettes because of the danger involved. The alternative system, I think...
Do you think that's happening?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. The balance, the money that the gun companies are making, the money that the NRA can put into politics has been strong enough to prevent...
Marco Rubio basically said to a student from Parkland that he wasn't going to not take NRA money.
Right. Too dangerous. The NRA will not only not give money to people who are on the right side of this issue, but they will find someone to run against that kind of person and give that person a lot of money. So you're looking at a situation where there has to be massive, overwhelming public effort, like there was with cigarettes, to get this problem under control. You know, I'm not against having guns. Hunting, the people care about that, or they want to learn how to shoot a gun. The issue is doing it in a rational way where we produce this thing for those people who want it for a useful, acceptable purpose. We let the whole country decide democratically what kind of guns can be used, by whom.
Live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives, I have three very special guests and their guests. These are students at Bishop McNamara High School in Maryland. What's your name and what grade are you in?
I'm Jonna Crump, and I'm an 11th grader.
I'm Maya Chase, and I'm a junior.
I'm Jada Thomas. I'm in the 11th grade.
I'm Gabby Gresham, and I'm in the 6th grade.
And which school are you in?
Kenmore Middle School.
Now, you all were telling me before we went live, before the interview started, that this is like a school-wide movement. Well, how did this start?
Well, right after the school shooting in Florida, we felt as if, we got tired of all of the shootings that were going on, and we felt as if we should come together and use the platform that we have as a school to try to make a difference, which is why you may see a couple of orange shirts around the area, even though we aren't together, but we are trying to make a difference.
Excellent. Turn around. Let me see the backs of your shirts. Look how coordinated this effort is. Look at that. Enough. These girls, okay, you can turn back around. Their school is done with gun violence. So in addition to you all coming together, having these amazing shirts, what else is your school doing to try to end gun violence and raise consciousness about the need to have real gun reform?
Just social media, getting the word out more, and hopefully everything will come to an end and we don't have to worry about this anymore.
And you were telling me you feel like maybe you almost have like some PTSD that, that you kind of are on edge at school. Let's talk about that.
So, like, sometimes when classrooms get, like, a little rowdy, and this is something that I have to think about, I'm like, okay, what are all these kids screaming for? And it's something, like, in the back of my mind that I think of now that I really would have never thought that I would have to think about in my life is somebody shooting up a classroom or something like that. And it's sad and it's very blunt to say, but that's something that we have to think about now in this day and age.
Are you frustrated that you have to think about gun violence and you said 6th grade? Yeah, is that frustrating to you?
A little bit, because I've dealt with past lockdowns at my old elementary school, and it's kind of scary because the school neighborhood that I'm in is kind of like not the best, and like it's very like not kid friendly. So I just think that overall, yes, I am frustrated.
And you were telling me that at least the teachers try to have dialogue and have conversation about school shootings and gun violence. What do those conversations sound like?
It's like multiple opinions mixed together. So like if you grow up in a neighborhood, like in a household watching news, then you have like all the opinions on it and what other celebrities are thinking about it.
Do you all think your generation is going to make a difference? Because many generations before you have tried to do something, and we feel like we haven't gotten as far as you all have gotten in the past month or two.
Well, in regards to what you just said, I do feel as if generations, they have gotten pretty far. As I was just speaking to my grandmother who was in the March of Washington for our civil rights. So I feel like we're taking what they did and we're using that as an example to go out and use this cause and make a difference. And like we were talking about earlier, we are the ones voting, and once we vote, trust me, it'll change. It will change.
Are you all registered to vote?
Not yet.
Voted in 2019, so.
And what kind of politicians are you going to be voting for in 2019?
Well, I would say I'm looking for someone that shares the views of they advertise that they're a person for the people, not for like things like, I don't know how to explain.
Right, that probably you want politicians that represent what the people want, not what the corporations and the 1% want. I would assume that's what you're trying to say.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And it sounds like research shows the majority of Americans want strong gun control. Even if they own guns, most gun owners want stricter gun control, universal background checks, and an end to assault ban. So thank you, ladies, so much for being here. Again, they're with Bishop McNamara High School. Turn around one more time so we can see your shirts. Enough. This is ACT.tv. This is the March for Our Lives March in Washington, D.C., and we've had enough. We need to end gun violence now, today, and these ladies are out here trying to make that happen. Let's go back to New York. We'd love to interview you.
Okay.
When our producer gets back, he's in New
Who are
York
you
right
with?
now. I'm with ACT.tv. We are a progressive media outlet, mostly on Facebook and social media. We're live right now. Not here, like I said, he's in New York, so you can't. Well, I guess you can watch it from you're on your phones, but definitely watch it when you get home later tonight. Yeah, we just want to ask you where you're from and why was it important for you to be out here today. We might ask you all, like, what are you in public school?
Yes.
Yeah, great. High school, middle school. Middle school? Like what you all are doing, maybe at your middle school to try to change the conversation about gun violence.
Well, we did have a walkout a couple days ago on March 14th. I'm not sure. I think the students were. I don't want to say against it, but if you were out, of course, you'd be marked absent. But I don't know. It was whatever you wanted to. Virginia Beach.
Oh, okay.
Are you there? I'm always in Virginia Beach. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, you don't necessarily think of Virginia Beach as the most conservative areas, but it seems like in more conservative areas, teachers were.
Well, we have a Republican congressman,
That's very true.
Chris Taylor.
Chris Taylor. Okay, I've lived in Maryland. So yeah, whereas like Maryland, a lot, especially the local schools. I mean, they like helped organize buses down here.
Soon we're gonna have you say you're watching footage of DC, but we're going to Massachusetts.
Okay. Okay, tell Brad we have an interview lined up though when we're.
All right, that sounds good. We also have an interview lined up when you're ready. And this will be short.
Okay, so you're watching on TV.
We're watching Enacted, but now we're going to Massachusetts. It'll be short.
Okay. So if you all, well, my cameraman, I think he's getting.
We're here all day.
I know.
Do you want her to do it now? No.
Okay. You're watching ACT.tv. We are live at the March for Our Lives. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., New York. Right now, we're going to Massachusetts.
People united will never be divided.
Moment. This is a movement. We're not stopping here.
This is Sabrina Williams. You are watching ACT.tv, and we are live in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives event. There are hundreds of thousands of people here trying to change the conversation around gun violence. What are you all's names and where are you from?
I'm Lily, and we're from Virginia Beach.
Jasmine, Paroa.
And you all are the parents.
Yes, we are. I'm Michael.
And my name is Chinara.
And tell me how is your school, you all are in middle school, you said. How is your school trying to change the conversation around gun violence? You said your school staged a walkout recently.
Yes, it was. There were
March 14th. We had a walkout. Some people walked out, some people didn't. I supported the cause, but I didn't walk out. I stayed in my classroom and I prayed for the children for 17 minutes because they didn't deserve to have their lives taken because the government doesn't know what they're doing.
You're right. They don't know what they're doing. Did you feel like the teachers and administrators were supporting you in trying to end gun violence in schools?
Well, it really depends. There were some teachers who were like at the verge of yes, no. There were some teachers who were fully against it, but they didn't want to say anything because they knew it was whatever we wanted to do as children to support our cause.
Yeah.
Are you all
entirely supportive?
Are you all nervous when you go to school? Do you think about gun violence?
Yes, almost all the time. I mean, you see all these people, they're in a parade and they're fighting this cause. And I mean, it's ridiculous because it could happen to anybody's school and you never know what day or what somebody's going to do to your school or your kid's school because...
Exactly. There was there were two people who had weapons on our school property and now we have no backpacks. We have to, it's very, I mean, I feel like I do feel safe, but up to a point.
What do you feel like is the answer
To what?
to ending gun violence in school?
Well, I think yes. We should have so much. We need change. Exactly.
We need. I don't
We
think.
need stricter gun laws.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here with all these people who've shown up today to say enough is enough. We cannot allow this to continue happening. And as these people have said, thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need action.
Let me ask you, as a parent, when you send your girls to school every day, what thoughts are going through your mind?
Well, before all of this happened, we really didn't think that much about it. But we know that any one of us can be affected by this violence. The guns are simply too prevalent. They're too easy to get, and there's no background checks. Clearly, universal background checks make sense.
Do you feel like our generation, or anyone over than about 18 or 20, do you think we failed this younger generation? I mean, Columbine was 20 years ago? I mean, what have we been doing since then? Or have our politicians just not been listening?
Well, the answer is pretty obvious. The people here today are saying, by their presence here, and we're doing the same thing with our presence here, that what's happened up until now is simply inadequate, and it needs to change.
It does definitely need to change, and I'm so glad that you all are part of the change. Thank you so much. It takes voices like yours, of all ages, of all demographics, to be out here and really putting pressure on our elected officials, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Demonstration is going to change, a kid's life, and we want our kids safe.
Excellent.
I can really feel it. There's a lot of power here.
And
This
for the
message.
kids, they did this, they brought everybody here. They can, everybody can, listen and, their voice, heard, Yes.
Absolutely. This has been a very, very powerful march. In fact, all of the speakers today were 18 years of age or younger. It's the younger generation that is leading this charge, and they are the ones who will very likely make change in our lifetime. You're watching ACT TV, and we are live at March for Our Lives. Stay with us. We're going to New York now.
What I would do if somebody came into my classroom. I'm incredibly scared every time I have to go through it, and I think about where would I put my kids? Where would I put my kids? That's not how I want to live. And I don't think all the guns in the world are worth one child's life. I think we can do better than this, and we have to. And I am so excited that my community has shown up and shut it down. You guys, they shared our stream on the ACT TV, so say hi.
What's what?
Say hi, guys. Bigger crowd.
How you doing?
Yeah.
Act TV, welcome to Westchester.
Oh, ACT TV, welcome to Westchester. We know how to shut it down too. Educators for gun reform are here. Sweet. I really want to show you the puppies now. The puppies.
National Puppy
And the kids in wagons. Oh, look at the babies. You cannot. We're here in Westchester. There are about 3,000 people. It's not the only march that's going on right now in the county. People are very passionate about gun protection in Westchester, and there's about 3,000 people and growing that have taken over the streets and are marching to the MLK statue. I'm here with some of my friends from Westchester Young Dems, and we're talking about the things that nobody seems to be listening to us in DC about, the things that teachers have been talking about. We don't want to be armed. We don't want to find places to hide our kids. We don't want to make sure that every door works properly in the building just in case. even though, of course, it's a fire hazard. All of those doors should be working well. We don't need to have the feeling about whether or not they can be locked. Schools are supposed to be a sanctuary. They're not supposed to be a prison. We don't need gun protection inside of our schools. It's insane.
Black guys, this one guy stepped into a massive pothole, and as I fell, as I
This is ACT.TV, and you are watching us live at the March for Our Lives. We are surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people who all have the same message, and that is, let's end gun violence. Let's get some real sensible gun control policies. I'm here with several protesters. What's your name?
Perry.
And Perry, how old are you?
6.
And do you know what your sign says?
Yes.
What does it say?
I have a right to be safe at school.
And what does that mean to you? Why would you not be safe at school?
Because people will be hurting each other.
Yeah, there's been a lot of gun violence in America lately. Do you think that's a bad thing?
Yes.
And what can we do to change it?
Change the law.
Change the law? Are you ever scared when you're in school?
No.
No? That's a good thing. People shouldn't be scared to be in school, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever talk about gun violence with your teachers or the principal?
No.
That's great. That's better than a lot of kids who are having shooting drills and all kind of terrible things that no person should ever have to go through. I'm going to ask your grandpa a few questions, but I love this sign. It says, just for the people at home, I have a right to be safe in school. No NRA. So I understand you're Perry's grandpa.
I am.
What brought you out here today?
Well, I'm supporting what Perry wants to do with gun control. I think she has some good ideas.
And why do you think there hasn't been better gun control laws enacted thus far?
Well, I think it's too political. We need to get away from politics and get into safety, especially for kids.
And what's the answer? Is the answer, I'm sorry, some people say, oh, it's a social change people's mind. We live in a violent society. Other people say, let's enact laws. In your opinion, what is the solution?
I think we do need to have stronger gun control laws because other civilized countries don't have this problem.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being out here today. Thanks to you and to Perry and the rest of your family. Thanks for helping us fight this fight. Again, research shows that the majority of Americans are in favor of universal background checks and stricter gun control laws. We've got to end all of these mass shootings. We've got to do something, and that is what the hundreds of thousands of people who have come out just to D.C. today, not including all of the sister city marches around the country, want to say. Let's end gun violence. Let's end it today. Back to New York.
By the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that enough is enough. And that this should be a gun-free world, period. Will you please repeat these words after me? Spread the word! Spread the word! All across the nation! We are going to be a great generation!
ACT TV. You have been watching live footage from the March for Our Lives here in DC, in New York, and in other places around the country all day. I am joined here by special guests. What are your names?
I'm Zara.
And what grade are you in?
4th. My name's Mikhail, and I'm in 5th grade.
And now, well, first of all, what brings you out today to the March for Our Lives? Why was it important for you to be here?
I just wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to see everyone speak.
And what about you? How has gun violence impacted you? What are your thoughts on gun violence?
Well, it's really opened my eyes to the reality of the world, and it's kind of destroyed my innocence.
Are you nervous about going to school?
Kind of, because I feel anything can happen at any time.
Do you hear conversations about gun violence or mass shootings in your classroom?
No, not really.
That's a good thing. Those are things you shouldn't be talking about. What about you? What about in your classroom?
A lot of the kids in my class, they know a lot of this stuff. They try not to talk about it, but sometimes it comes up and it's something that they say. But yeah, we talk about it sometimes.
Let me ask your parents, how do you feel sending your kids to school every day? It must be terrifying.
It's a very scary thought. It's very scary, but that's the reality that we have to live with, and that's why we want to make a change, a difference, and that's why we're here, so that these amazing students who started this whole movement, they were a big inspiration to us, and we wanted to be there to support them in every which way we could. And there's strength in numbers, and that's why we're here.
And you were telling me about some really kind of ridiculous things that your children's school did recently. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, some of the suggestions were that the teachers should have hammers in their classrooms, and if one of the emails suggested or they were told that throw things at a shooter, whatever you have in your hand, and the teacher was saying, I'll block the shooter, and you try to jump out of the window if the window is open. So those are just some of the suggestions that were floating around over there, and it's just scary to think that. And my son came and said that they told us that just run as fast as you can. There's a park right across the school, and our house is there. And my son asked that, Mommy, should I run straight to the park, or should I just run straight to the house? What should I do? I mean, these are not questions that, you want your 10 and 12-year-old asking you, and you don't know the answer to that yourself because you've never been in that situation. What do you tell your child? I mean, nobody's prepared for any of this stuff.
I mean, and not only are the children not prepared and the parents not prepared, I mean, the teacher who's now expected to throw his or her body in front of a shooter to save, I'm sure that's not what they sign up for. And it seems like there's such an easier answer, right? What do you think the solution is?
No guns. That's the main solution. We don't need guns. We respect the Second Amendment, but in the 1800s, that was muskets. These are not muskets. The muskets didn't shoot 50, 60 rounds in 30 seconds. I grew up in a third world country where street violence was prevalent, and I've lived here for 35 years, and I left that country to make this my home, and I did not expect that we're going backwards in time and to a distant world where we shouldn't be right now.
You're absolutely right. It feels like you're going backwards in time, especially when the United States, we boast so much that we're so great in everything, but yet there's data from other countries that shows when you outlaw, when you ban guns, or at least ban assault rifles, gun deaths really go down. The research is there, and I just don't understand why we can't follow it.
You don't need I don't even know their names, AK-47s and AR-15s or whatever there is for hunting. You need a rifle for hunting if that's your pleasure. You don't need these automatic weapons, and it's just absurd that if your desire to have guns clouds your common sense and your judgment. It's just absurd.
Excellent. I'm going to ask your kids one last question. So what's your objective for today? What are we trying to accomplish?
We want to completely just make this world, at least this country, a safer place for just at least going to school.
I think that's a pretty amazing goal. Let's make this country safer for kids at least going to school. I think we can do it. Today, we had hundreds of thousands of people come out here to the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. None of the speakers were over 18 years old. That energy from our youth is going to change the world. Let's make sure we do everything we can to support our youth and end gun violence. Enough is enough. You're watching ACT TV, and we are live in Washington, D.C. Let's go back to New York.
It's time for a change. Never again.
I'd like to take it down for a minute here. There might be musicians on this stage, but this is not Coachella. We might have movie stars in the crowd. We might have videos on these screens, but this is not the Oscars. And I don't know if you've been looking, but I don't see any Macy's Day balloons out there. This is real life. This is reality. This is what's happening in our country and around the world today. I'd like to make it real for a minute. February 14th is my sister's birthday. She had to spend that birthday huddled under a desk, holding Lauren Hogg, David's sister, her hand, hoping that she was going to make it home that day. She was premature. She didn't know if she was going to make it at the beginning of her life, and she didn't know if she was going to make it home that day this year. She might have not stared down the shooter's eyes. She might have not even seen him or even known who he was. But he affected her life just as much as everybody else who's spoken on this stage today. And I know a lot of people are out there saying that we need to make America safe again. And I know that we can't. We cannot make America safe again until we arm our teachers. We need to arm our teachers. We need to arm them with pencils, pens, paper, and the money they need. They need that money to support their families and to support themselves before they can support the futures in those classrooms, to support the future that sits down at that desk waiting to learn. And we need to arm our students too. We need to arm them with the facts and the knowledge and the education they need to live in the real world, not just some fantasy, not just something painted out there by the public, by the media. We need them to be armed, and there's only one way to do that. This right here, this connects you to the whole of human information, the whole of human knowledge. It connects you with the click of a button. You can learn anything that I've learned, anything that we've all learned in our journey to this stage right here today. You can learn it just like that. Just go to a website, type it in, and it's there. I've been amazed by what I've seen. I'm amazed that I cannot see the end of this crowd here in DC today. I've been amazed by all of the walkouts that have been taking place over the past 5 weeks. And these walkouts have been criticized. They've been told that it is a disruption to the educational process. And I say to them, the real disruption to the educational process is staring down the barrel of a gun. It's the fact that you can be taking a calculus exam, and then when you're doing that, you have in the back of your head the thought that where's the shooter gonna enter? When's he gonna come in? Where can I hide? We're done hiding. We're done being afraid. We're done being full of fear because it is a waste of our time and it is not living out what our forefathers, what our founding fathers envisioned for this country. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And now I know we march today, but this isn't over. This is the beginning of the end, and from here we fight. It is time to fight for our lives. And I say there's only one way to do that. We need to rev up society. We need to rev up the engines. We need to rev up America. And we do that through registering to vote. We need to do that through every single walkout. We will be making sure that you can register to vote, pre-register to vote. Then we will educate. We will be going around the country until these elections and therefore after, until we can tell every man, woman, and child in this country what is real, what is going on. And we need to make sure that everyone knows what is actually happening in their backyard and abroad. So we will register, we will educate, and then when it comes down to it, we will vote. They might preach NRA, they might preach GUN, but we're preaching REV. Register, educate, vote. Thank you, and hello, Uncle Myron.
Sabrina Williams, and you are watching ACT TV Live. We are in Washington, D.C. at the March for Our Lives. I am here by some very excited protesters. They are here all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina. Tell me about your organization.
Troy Johnson, straight from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the director of YM4C, which stands for Young Men for Christ. Have an opportunity, please go to ym4c.org. We're here to mentor, educate, and uplift the young men of today, making tomorrow a better place. We do that with young men ages 8 through 18 through our 4-part practical programming.
And tell me about what your organization is doing specifically in terms of trying to prevent and minimize gun violence in these kids' lives, at school, and in their communities.
One of the biggest things is vigilance. You got to understand we take nothing for granted. Any instance, any opportunity that they see, there's no such thing as snitching. Say something. We protect ourselves by being vigilant against each other. 2, we have to have love. I believe love is the glue that binds us together. Without it is why we're so divisive.
Now let me ask the boys a question. You all can answer collectively. How do you feel about guns? Do you like guns? Are they bad?
Yes.
What would you like to see happen to guns? Do you think they should be banned?
Yes, because guns, you shouldn't bring them to school or even show people guns, because then, you know, they can just tell the teacher that you have a gun. And
I don't necessarily think, like, we should have guns to protect ourselves, like, but at a certain age, I think, like at 21, we're supposed to have guns now, like at 18, where you can like walk into school and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah, there should be some restrictions on your ability to get guns. Absolutely. So when you go to school every day, are you nervous at all about gun violence in your school?
No, not really.
No, you feel pretty insulated from that.
Yes.
Excellent. So let me ask you. So. What do you think the solution is to gun violence? Is it laws? Is it changing people's perceptions of gun violence? What is it?
I think there's a holistic approach. First, obviously legislation has to do their job. We do need better policies. I came up with the sign that says policy prevents tragedy, which is true. If we can start from the head down, it trickles down. Second, on our local level, training individuals. No, I do not believe teachers need guns. However, we do need security there that's there to uplift, that's there to make sure that the kids are safe. I think it starts from a high level and it trickles down, and then locally we need to have better training.
Excellent. Thank you all so much, and thank you for coming all the way up here from Raleigh, North Carolina. I just want to make sure that everyone remembers at home that the majority of Americans do support gun legislation, gun restriction, and these kids, these young people are out here today to make that heard, to make that known. We want an end to gun violence. We want stricter gun control laws. In fact, none of the speakers here today at March for Our Lives was over 18 years old. We're letting the young people lead the way in terms of this conversation. So stay with us. We'll be live for just a little bit longer. March for Our Lives. You're watching ACT TV.
And then experience it right before your eyes. And this is why. Oh my God. And this is why this piece is called Enough. Never did I think I would be herded like cattle by a shower of bullets that left me scarred and rattled, forced to huddle among those who lost their last living breaths on a day that was designated for loves and laugh. I never got to say goodbye. I could barely see out my eyes because I was crying tears and blood at the same time. Barricaded behind those filing cabinets and bookcases that day taught me one thing, and one thing only. Regardless of how much money you pay or how much you pray, if you don't change anything today, your children will no longer stay. So when do we say enough is enough? Day in and day out, our kids are getting shot up. And the moment we speak up, we're scolded that we are not old enough. It is as if we need permission to ask our friends not to die. Lawmakers and politicians will scream guns are not the issue, but can't look me in the eye.
We are live at the March for Our Lives event in Washington, D.C. We have been bringing you footage all day from various cities around the nation. From here in D.C., there are hundreds of thousands of people here, and we all have the same message, and that is we want an end to gun violence now. We want the president, we want our members of Congress to take action. The majority of Americans want this. I'm joined by a Catholic University student, Jocelyn McCurdy-Keats. Gun violence has been an issue on college campuses. This is not just high schools. How does that impact you?
It's so funny you say that. Last year on my campus, we had 2 lockdowns, and where there was an active shooter, and obviously everything turned out fine. But I think I'm really struck, and a lot of us are really struck right now by the fact that this is becoming a normal part of our day-to-day lives. I'm a psychology student. The way fear works, it's not the case that just because your school isn't being shot down at the moment, that this is not a part of your lived reality. And it is horrifying that we've been interviewing children today, elementary school children, who go to school with a plausible fear that they will be shot. That's that blows my mind. In terms of a religious perspective, it's interesting to me that the pro-life movement isn't more inflamed by this. I mean, is that weird to you too?
It absolutely is. It's pro-birth, but after you're born, it's not really a pro-life movement. Absolutely.
Especially because, again, I can't say this is enough. There is not an epidemic of Walmarts being shot up. It's an epidemic of schools, the most vulnerable in our population, and for some reason, the religious movement is being slow to get behind this. But the good thing is, as I think we're seeing out here, a lot of other people are not slow to get behind this. These children are on it. They're prepared. This might be one of the best organized marches I've been to in the past year. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. There was great music, amazing speakers. Let me ask you, as a college student, what are you hearing around your campus? Are people kind of on board with this? Are they just ignoring it because of the latest, social fad? What are you hearing amongst your peers?
Well, it's funny you say that because I think a lot of people are galvanized by this, especially college, high school, grad school. Everybody's galvanized. But what the right has been really great at doing is alienating the religious from the rest of the population. On my campus, social justice is a bad word for a lot of people. Social justice is pro-abortion, it's pro-secular, and there seems to be this lost understanding that protecting life is a religious movement. We are here as spiritual people in the community to protect each other. And if that doesn't include children, I don't know who it does include.
So what is the solution, Jocelyn? How can we make sure that our college campuses are safe? How can we make sure that our schools are safe? How can we make sure that our churches are safe? How can we end gun violence?
So I think it's really interesting that you bring that up because, again, this is happening in our churches too. But there's some pretty common sense policy solutions. If you are not able to have, if you have domestic violence charges on your record, there's no reason you should have access to weaponry. If we are able to regulate motor vehicles in a basic way, we should be able to regulate assault rifles in the same fashion. This isn't even necessarily that salacious of an issue. We regulate everything else. Why not our guns?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you had one last question, if you were face to face with President Trump and you could talk to him about gun violence and he might actually listen, what would you say?
Oh my goodness. If I were speaking to, this is for everybody, if you're talking to a narcissist, apply to their self-interest. So I would ask a man who is so concerned with his image if he really wants to be the president that watched thousands of children get murdered in an unnecessary way.
And did nothing. Right. Gun control could make him look good.
It could make you look so good. President Trump, if you're watching, history loves you. It will love you if you implement common sense gun reform.
I hope he's watching. Yeah. On that note, thank you so much for your interview, Jocelyn. You have been watching live ACT TV all day long. We've been bringing you live footage of the March for Our Lives from Washington, D.C., New York State, Massachusetts, and several other cities around the nation. Hundreds of thousands of people have shown up today, and they are just a reflection of the millions and millions of Americans that want common sense gun control laws enacted now. We want an end to gun violence because enough is enough. No student should have to go to school and be afraid of being killed. No worshiper should have to go to church and be afraid because they think they're going to get shot. No person should go to work, go to college, and be afraid that they're going to get shot. We need gun regulations now, and we need an end to gun violence. Thank you for watching. You've been watching ACT TV, March for Our Lives.
There has been one tweet that I would like to call attention to. So many signs that the Florida shooter was mentally disturbed, even expelled for bad and erratic behavior. Neighbors and classmates knew he was a big problem, must always report such instances to authorities again and again. We did, time and time again. Since he was in middle school, it was no surprise to anyone who knew him to hear that he was the shooter. Those talking about how we should have not ostracized him, you didn't know this kid. Okay, we did. We know that they're claiming that there are mental health issues, and I am not a psychologist, but we need to pay attention to the fact that this isn't just a mental health issue. He wouldn't have harmed that many students with a knife. And how about we stop blaming the victims for something that was the shooter's fault? The fault of the people who let him buy the guns in the first place, those at the gun shows, the people who encouraged him to buy accessories for his guns to make them fully automatic, the people who didn't take them away from him when they knew that he expressed homicidal tendencies. And I am not talking about the FBI. I am talking about the people that he lived with. I'm talking about the neighbors who saw him outside holding guns. If the president wants to come up to me and tell me to my face that it was a terrible tragedy and how it should never have happened, and maintain telling us how nothing is going to be done about it, I'm going to happily ask him how much money he received from the National Rifle Association. Who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you.
voted into power are lying to us. And us kids seem to be the only ones who notice and are prepared to call BS. Companies trying to make caricatures of the teenagers nowadays, saying that all we are is self-involved and trend-obsessed, and they hush us into submissions when our message doesn't reach the ears of the nation. We are prepared to call BS. Politicians who sit in their gilded House and Senate seats funded by the NRA telling us nothing could have ever been done to prevent this. We call BS. They say that tougher gun laws do not decrease gun violence. We call BS. They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. We call BS. They say guns are just tools like knives and are as dangerous as cars. We call BS. No, they say that no laws could have been able to prevent the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred. We call BS. That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS. If you agree, register to vote. Contact your local congresspeople. Give them a piece of your mind.
Ready? I'll actually, let me just